So this is my 2006 Nissan Sentra that I purchased off the Facebook Marketplace for $2,300. Now, that was steep for this one in the fact that it has 145,000 miles on it. I mean, it's a bit anemic with the 1.8 liter engine, but it was in pretty decent condition. And what really got me is brand new tires, had a new alternator, new battery, and those are the expenses that when you get any used vehicle add up very quickly. Now, after driving it for a couple of weeks, I realized it needed some things that need to be addressed. And first things first, we spent about $400 addressing all the issues with it. Brakes, the cooling system, belts, tune-up, even the transmission hard shift, and finally got this vehicle squared away. Oh, not to mention, did do a tune-up, and probably can't see it, but we upgraded the sound system. You gotta have good tunes if you're gonna have a vehicle. So with all that being said, I'm into this vehicle $2,700. It is 100% squared away, and I would not hesitate to drive this vehicle to California and back if I had to, as it's solid. It's solid. It's perfect. It does everything that I needed to do. So that's why I went ahead and I've sold it. Now, the initial plan was not to sell it, but considering that I'm into this $2,700, I was offered $3,500. You can't beat that deal. And as much as I've enjoyed this car for the past 6 weeks that I've owned it, it's a little small. It's a little small, especially when you have a family. And even though I don't have a big family, still it is small, and we need something a little better. Plus, I'm bored and I need something else. So I went ahead and did the right thing and bought a car that is broken, probably with one of the worst engines out there. And yeah, after 2 hours of owning it, it's not working. As you can see, it's not in the driveway, it's in the garage. So let me show you what I got. Now, typically I like to film these videos out in the driveway, but I needed to get this thing in the garage. So I purchased this 2009 Toyota Camry with 206,000 miles for $1,000. Now, the price is pretty good. It does have mileage, but if you're familiar with these Camrys of this generation, yes, they can be reliable, but they can also be a nightmare. Now, if anybody's familiar with this, you also know about the terrible engine with the excessive oil consumption, the sticky dash, the pain in the butt HVAC system, multiple coolant leaks, but it's still a good car. And before it broke down, and I'll talk about that in just a second, the 2-3 hours I did get to drive it, it ran fantastic. Very smooth, very quiet on the highway, no hesitation, no skips, and this thing was a really comfortable ride. But being only a few miles away from the house, started driving it, flashing check engine light, and yeah, ran like crap, would not accelerate. So plugged in the scanner, and we have a misfire on cylinder 3, which I need to diagnose. And my experience with these Toyotas is typically a coil pack, but I'll be doing a separate video on the diagnosis and diving deep into this vehicle just like I do any of my other vehicles. So let's take a look at it. As you can see, the engine bay, well, it's had some work done. Somebody decided to put one of these awful clamps because they had a leak, and instead of fixing the hose and doing it the right way, they just put that clamp on there. This is the more interesting part. As you can see, the upper radiator hose has been changed, but if you look, that's kinked. They put the wrong hose in there. That's great. But we got a solution for that, and we'll address that later. Same thing with the lower radiator hose, and as far as anything else, you could tell I had a big power steering leak because there's just remnants of just all the dried up oil over there. Now, I have gone ahead and cleaned up this engine so I could get a better idea of what's leaking. Now, I did find that the valve cover is leaking, but you know, for 206,000 miles, that's to be expected. The battery cable, well, they decided to do this, so we'll definitely have to hunt one of these down and put the right one in there. Now, as far as the body, it has some love kisses. Now, I did run the Carfax, and folks, if you're gonna buy a used vehicle, spend the money, get a Carfax done. It will help you, it will guarantee you, and honestly, sometimes running the Carfax is a lot cheaper and better than getting a pre-inspection. I do recommend pre-inspections, but Carfax, if you're familiar with vehicles, will at least help you get in the right direction. Now, it was involved in a minor collision, according to the Carfax, and as you can see, well, they replaced the front bumper, but the paint job, well, it was to be expected. This does not line up. This is not sitting in. And let's see if I can get this in the camera. Folks, yeah, rivets. They decided to rivet that on. So that's something that I'll have to fix and probably ghetto fix it better than that. Because, well, I'm not going to buy a whole new bumper for this. And if you look at it, the battery, it's not the right battery, side post. But I mean, it works. It works, and maybe I have to hunt it down, or maybe I'll just leave that alone. Now, as far as everything over here, the pumps, the belts, it looks like nothing has been messed with. Maybe they changed the belt that one time. Water pump, it's hard to say if that's been changed, but we will be addressing that because I've added coolant, but as you can see in here, it's nasty in there. The coolant system is very, very nasty, and that needs to be addressed, which kind of leads me to the next issue is you get heat on the driver's side, but no heat on the passenger side. Now, typically with these cars, from my research and understanding, if you have the dual climate zone, you typically have to change the actuator on the passenger side, which is a nightmare. But from the single climate zone, from what I understand, this is what I'm hoping for the best, the system needs to be flushed. It had no coolant, it was low, it could probably have an air bubble in there, a leak, and as chunky, and I wish I would have showed that before I put the stuff in there, chunky as the coolant stuff was in there, yeah, we're gonna do a flush. So before we dive into the dash and try to change blend door actuators, I'm gonna flush the system, and there'll be separate videos on this. Now, we have one little dent right over here, which is not terrible. I'm not worried about it. This is not going to be a show car. This is just something a lot more comfortable than what I have. The tires, they're there, and at least we have the 17-inch aluminum wheels, which look a lot better on this car, especially compared to the other ones. I think it's the BBS rims. I just don't like those, but I really do like these rims. The brakes, yeah, they're there, but you know, they're not too happy, so they'll definitely have to be addressed. And as you can see, this rear tire, they have racing slicks. So I guess they used to take this to the drag strip, you know, and yeah, this tire looks definitely not happy, so we'll have to definitely get a new set of tires. And the rears, you probably can't see it too much, but has the lip like the Grand Canyon, so we definitely need to address that. As you can see, this vehicle was left in the sun, so we got some clear coat fading, but I'm pretty sure we could clean this up and make it a lot better than what it was. Not too concerned about that. We got a brand new tire up there, which I was excited about. I was like, well, I got one new tire, I just need to buy 3 other tires. It's a Kelly tire, nothing against them, but it's already 3 years old, so they got one of those, you know, used tires. Great. Now for our interior, it's actually not terrible. The seat, as you can see, which is typical with any vehicle, is ripped, and they did some type of repair there. And I'll be honest with you folks, that's actually not terrible. I like it. Definitely got to prove. Still got that tear down over here, which maybe we could throw a stitch or 2 in there and just kind of keep that from getting worse. Leather wrap steering wheel, but as you can see, they grip down pretty tight, so that's worn out. Normal fade on the sides, on the door panels right over here, but for the most part, the interior is actually pretty good. But it does have the typical issue with the Toyotas of this vintage, the sticky dash. Well, we could clean that up, put some protectant on it, shine it, make it last, and this thing would be good to go. It does have the factory radio, which is kind of a shame. The system sounds amazing, but Bluetooth is nice. I went ahead and put in a FM transmitter, which works for now, but maybe upgrade this to some navigation, something fancier. I like to have a nice radio in there, so that's something I definitely have to consider. Now, as far as the back, you can tell people really didn't sit back here as well. It's mint. I mean, it's mint. What more can I say? These back seats are very roomy, very comfortable. Cup holders, which is awesome for the little human that I'm responsible for. She will definitely enjoy that. And the only other weird thing is this gas cap on it. Not sure what happened over here. It's kind of sticking out. It's bent. It doesn't close properly, so might have to get a new one and mount it. It's 2 rivets. We could drill out those rivets, put some new ones in there, and get a cap. Just have to find one that matches. And that should hopefully fix the issue. Now, like I talked about earlier, it is important to get the Carfax, and here's why, which made me pull the trigger. Now, for $1,000, you can't go wrong on it, but yes, we all know the gamble with the 2.4 liter excessive oil consumption issues with these engines. But looking at the Carfax, this engine was replaced at the dealership with the new upgraded engine, according to the Carfax, at 40,000 miles. So even though it has 206,000, really the engine has 160,000 miles, but it does have the upgraded piston rings or whatever. And here's a quick note, and I don't think I could pull it because we're dark, but if you're wondering if this engine has been addressed or replaced, take a look at the silicone. The factory silicone is gray, and then the upgraded one for whoever built the engine or did the work is black. So out of the factory, if it's gray, you know the issue hasn't been addressed, or the engine hasn't been dealt with the excessive oil consumption. If you see the black silicone, you know that issue has been dealt with. And the final important thing of a good Carfax, it is a southern vehicle. A lot of times you get these vehicles, they look good, low mileage, but then when you get underneath, it looks like Swiss cheese. This vehicle has been in South Carolina its whole life. It has been constantly serviced at the Toyota dealer in South Carolina. So that was my major driving factor for it, is I don't like rusty, crusty vehicles. If I'm gonna buy an older vehicle, I want a southern vehicle. And you'll see this in a later video. If you look underneath here, it looks brand spanking new. I mean, just minus the normal road stuff on it, but it looks good. So even though my Nissan is squared away, it's reliable, it's good to go, for $3,500, the $800 profit I made off of it, I think it's the way to go. And if one thing you've learned about life is that certain things, if you hold on to it too long, you really lose the value. And to make a couple of dollars on that, it's not a bad deal. But this is to be determined. $1,000, needs some work, but pretty much the same thing I did to that other car, I'll be doing to this one, and I'll take you guys along for the ride and show you the repairs and what I find out. And maybe if I get bored with this and I find a better deal, we'll sell this one and get something else. I don't know. But definitely let me know in the comments if you think I should have kept the Nissan, or was this the better deal? I mean, for $1,000, I think we're off to the right start, but that's to be determined as we quickly dive into this vehicle. So thanks for watching, and let's go ahead and start turning some wrenches.